Scotland. Anybody from Scotland here? Can I move you over to North America? Is this really true?
As they're saying something, I go, what I hear you saying is, and then I try to repeat it back to them with just a little bit of a word difference, and then they can calibrate me as we go. When we tap into a certain slice of life, like a certain component of life, our brain gives us a cocktail of chemicals that reward us for thinking about that thing. So if a person leads with extroverted feeling, basically everything that has to do with relationships and interconnectedness and how cultures work and how people vibe with each other and how morale gets met and how needs get met, and like basically interpersonal, anything that's interpersonal dynamics from the smallest element writ large, right? From two people all the way up to a global community. Anytime somebody who leads with that function is focused on that, their brain starts dumping chemicals to reward them for that process. This is one of the great things about being here, is that we get all of this juicy information straight from the horse's mouth.
Broad.
Side.
Or is it so situational and personality specific that you're just like, we're not exactly sure what the tonality shift meant, but the fact that it was there just marks this as important in some fashion?
Yes.
I can always tie it in to the real world, to the current world, always.
Right.
So we go off tangents. I mean, one time I got through one slide in 47 minutes because I ended up talking about between monarchy and democracy.
A colleague of mine told me he was sitting next to like a 14-year-old girl who puked all over him. Oh.
Guess what type he is?
You're a pharmacist? Where? At a health center in Washington.
And how things are not always closed the way we would like to see, but the content is masterfully put together. And so I'm looking forward to the ahas that I know will come after I dance on a speaker and then have a shower and just sit in there and vibe because it'll come. So
thank you for being here this week. Thank you.
I came into this having already built my TV. I had the perfect job to build that co-pilot, and that's all I really knew. And then I realized that I've been missing out on that NI throughout my life. I've been missing out on intuitive conversations, the ability for others to appreciate it, to understand it. And so now I'm going the long way around. I'm learning how to use it, learning to trust it, especially in Melissa's class. It's brutal.
In a good way, right? Thank you for being here this week.
That's what thank you guys for being so welcoming and for your warmth and your curiosity. And to the one-on-one students, I have a suspicion Joel and Antonio are paying you to laugh at my jokes, so thank you. Very convincing. My biggest takeaway is that the TI disposition does have a place in this world.
Are naturally going to provide time for themselves. They're going to naturally flow into this. But as extroverts, we have to be mindful of setting that time aside for us to get into our introverted spaces, to ruminate on some of the things that came to us, and just let it integrate, let it soak into the soul, into the marrow of our bones of who we are as people. So I want to encourage that this coming week.
So when it comes to the typology community, there are several schools of thought. You have C.S. Joseph, we got cats like Dave Superpowers, we have Frank James, there's just a lot of people out there, Michael Pierce, and I think that it's really good to have a well-rounded perspective on all of the different ways to approach Jung's work. When it comes to the Myers-Briggs and stuff like that. But I feel like majority of us tend to have a go-to after we've kind of like looked at all of them and then created our own perspective. And I think that it wouldn't surprise most of y'all to know that my go-to that I found to be most reliable is personality hacker. Now, in this video, I want to go ahead and let you guys know why I personally really appreciate the work that Personality Hacker has done, and why I kind of rely most on them and what they put out more than any of the other schools of thought. And that's not to say stuff like, oh, rational typing or, whatever other places, Amy Y, anybody who's like talking about type online. It's not to say that I'm trying to discredit them or like don't listen to them. That's not the case. If anything, I believe that a lot of times it's more of other systems, other people, they attack Personality Hacker instead. And I was not put up to this by Joel and Antonia or anything like that. It's just something that I've seen so much over the years. And I was like, you know what? I understand them enough. I'm close with them. And I've been in this long enough, and I've looked at the other systems and people who've been profiled by me in comparison to like other people, and I've gotten enough of a view on how to essentially make sense of all of this. Like, my approach to this is, first of all, we should use whatever works. So some people could even look at type in itself and be like, oh, this stuff is all fake anyway. But I really like the idea that using what works, like what works for you, whether a person is really the type that you say that they are or not, like, is that helping your life? Is it bringing more understanding to the people around you? I like what coincidentally Antonia Dodge tweeted just this morning. It's not what you know about the cognitive functions, it's how you think about them that makes them transformative. And I feel like that's something that's really seen throughout Personality Hacker. And again, it's not to say that they just have the right answers all the way through. They're never wrong. They are the superior typology system. But like I said, this is a video where I just wanted to explain why I personally really appreciate them based on my experience with them and their products. And again, it's kind of like combating a lot of the messaging that I've gotten, like jokes like, oh, well, you're in the Personality Hacker cult.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I understand like exactly what you're trying to say, and like I get it, and I know you have like been indoctrinated with Personality Hacker, and that's what you grew up with and whatever.
Like, even seeing online, like people like they don't even understand like why certain nicknames have been given to the cognitive functions by Personality Hacker. They haven't listened to the podcast or anything like in depth, but they just want to criticize. Which, by the way, Joel and Antonia are unbothered by, because they know the work that they've put into it. But yeah, I guess it's, one of their students, it's like, okay, I want to be the one to come into defense with that. And so this is a video of 3 reasons why I love Personality Hacker and I trust Personality Hacker. And I pretty much overall prefer Personality Hacker and the way that they approach things over most of the other typology systems. Not to say that, once again, I don't also glean things from the other systems, but I invest most in Personality Hacker. And also, I did an interview video with Joel and Antonia themselves over at their house. They allowed me and my wife Jamila to stay over at their place for 4 days a couple years ago. And while we were there, then we recorded a lot of content. We had a lot of great conversations, and I was able to be on one of their podcasts, being an ENFJ man. And then they were able to be on my channel. If you haven't seen that video yet, you guys should check it out. It's pretty much like talking about the future of typology and how they started their business and what their goal is for everything. And even talking about the archives that, a lot of us on YouTube, like, we're like, oh, look at us. We coming up with all these things about type when there's actually a whole archive, according to Antonia, where they've already dived into a lot of strongly academic things having to do with typology. So there's already giants that are there and provided for us to be able to be on their shoulders, so that we can just continue to build from them instead of building from scratch. And I feel like the fact that they even knew that, and they kind of go into their inferior SI to look at that before they glean the NE, Antonia being ENTP and Joel being ENFP. I think that this is really something. And that kind of goes into my first point, which is they do the work. One thing that I really love about Personality Hacker is that, again, they do the work. They read so much material. And not only do they read the material, but then they also find the people who wrote the material, if they're still alive. They're being coached by John Beebe right now, face to face. And they're asking all of the questions, especially since John Beebe only has one book out, as far to my knowledge, and he's more of a lecturer, and it's a little bit convoluted and all of that. And they're Personality Hacker, they're learning everything from him so they can break it down in an easier way for everybody else around them. I think that the fact that they have these connections to the legends or the origins of personality typology in itself is a really big step. It's a really big thing of credibility, because they can go and glean the original things, and then they go and also test iterate it in the world. So they gather people, in the community that they have, and they're able to observe them. We're all hamsters, where they can just observe us. They can ask us all the questions hey, I've read all of these theories. I talked to John Beebe, I've talked to this person, I've done that, I've read these archives, everything. But how do you guys relate to this as ENFPs? How do you guys relate to this as INTJs, stuff like that. And I feel like the fact that they're always going out there, meeting real people, and they're taking the theory into real life and calibrating themselves so they can better understand everything, and they're constantly expanding it with more and more and more experiences. I think that's just absolutely amazing, because not everybody is doing that. Not everybody is able to actually gather that many people who are interested in type, and then also people who are not interested in type, and then observe all of them in that way and kind of make a whole big business out of this, where they're really focusing and studying all of this. And especially with someone like Antonia, who has worked so heavily on her TI, that calibration. And the biggest thing that I really just appreciate and respect about her is that she is open to being wrong. And when she finds out that she's wrong, then she calibrates quickly. Antonia will immediately begin to recalibrate all of her thoughts around the topic. She will start to try to understand where her coding is messed up, where her biases are, and then fix that. And then she will also share it with the students so that we can continue to get it more and more accurate. And then Joel, he's always bringing the vision, pretty much. Hey, what about live events? What about, what if we started a podcast? What if we were able to actually, have embodiment exercises? He has the vision and the ideas, and he brings the experience, so that we can all just have a great time. And so I think that the fact that they really put in a lot of work into the stuff that they do, to me, it's insane. And I don't see that coming from a lot of other places. For this reason, that also makes their products really A1 quality. Now, obviously, it's still a business. So of course, the products are going to be expensive and they're going to be promoting it, but they give out so much free content, in their podcast, which is personally my favorite podcast out of all of the several podcasts that I listen to, and I have been listening to for years. They give out, there's no ads in their podcasts. And the most, promotional stuff that you'll ever get from there is, oh, by the way, we made an Infj Starter Kit. If you guys are interested, check it out. We have written a really great book that I think that you guys might actually find helpful. Check it out. And it's not like a salesman type of thing. It's like, hey, if you're really interested in this stuff, again, my number one point, we have put in the work, and then we not only put in the work to understand this stuff to the deepest ability that we can, and we're continuing to further that, but now we've also created a product so that for you, who probably has not put in all that work, you can understand the work that we've done in the process and the conclusions that we've come to by buying this book, by buying this product, by engaging in our profiler training program, stuff like that. Like if you want to learn more, then we have curated a community and a resource for you to be able to refer to. And I think that's absolutely awesome, if you ask me. And so that's one of the biggest things, and that's how, they even go through, once again, like, how did we come up with the, I guess obviously to a lot of people it wouldn't be perfect nickname, but how did we come up with the nickname for each function? Why did we come up with the nickname for each function? Yes, we know that SI means so much more than memory, and we're not even saying that SI, like all SI users will have an amazing memory, but this is why we decided to nickname it memory as opposed to this. Even with effectiveness, they were going between effectiveness and I think efficiency, and they got really pedantic, and they're like, well, we won't say efficiency because that means this is that. So instead we're gonna nickname TE effectiveness because it gets more to the heart of it, But that doesn't mean, obviously, that it's just only about effectiveness. This is curated for people who are new to typology, and once they start learning, the functions like, oh, harmony, that is extroverted feeling, and then they start growing from there, and then they start understanding the nuance of it. Now you're going to be able to actually have people who have got on the on-ramp and they were able to learn so much more by this basic nickname. And so the goal is to rise above the two-dimensional nickname and have a deeper understanding, but you can't jump into all of the deep stuff first, or at least a lot of people are not really able to. So they package it in a way where it's like, hey, it's gonna get deeper over time, and trust me, it does when you listen to their podcasts, when you go to their events. It's deep stuff. They do the work. I cannot emphasize that enough. But at the end of the day, they also know how to simplify it, and I feel like that's what makes them the best teachers, because they'll also show you the work and they're willing to calibrate with the students there, knowing that even though we are the experts, we are still learning. And I think that's great. So number 2 is that it's deeper than type. With a lot of people who get into typology, then they're just mainly focused on learning like, what personality type am I, and how can it stroke my ego better, or just better, like, how can I even understand myself? But with Personality Hacker, from what I've seen, they don't stop there. They're like, okay, you now know what personality type you are. Let's show you how to use your functions in the most efficient and effective way possible. Like, they have been able to tap into the lowest spectrum of how all the functions look like, and then how they look like at their best. And they're continuing to build that spectrum, how each type looks like at their worst and how each type looks like at their best, which they also have free podcasts on for people to go and check out. And so when you have this type of nuance, it's really difficult to be able to get yourself in a place where you're very closed-minded about things, where you are viewing people in a two-dimensional way. I believe that because of this nuance that they've built, then they've been able to transcend type in a lot of ways. So they can now understand, like, yeah, we know, once again, that people with this function tend to show up this way. That's a pattern, but we've met a lot of people who actually don't always show up this way. And we understand that this model is not necessarily perfect, but this is how we can use it still as a tool, not to hurt people, not to brag about, oh, I know how your mind is wired better than you do kind of thing, but to understand other people and not just understand them and not just understand ourselves, but help all of us grow and become better overall people as a society. And I, as an FE Dom especially, like, that to me is beautiful, we can see a function operating in its average form, and then when you listen to Personality Hacker, when you see their coaching and all of that, their goal is to get you to be operating it at their highest form. So FE, for example, being completely just, about like interpersonal dynamics and, you know, sociograms and, you know, how are we emotionally affecting each other and shared values amongst a group. At its best, it is creating harmony. So possibly, for those of you who might have watched, you know, my video with T on being an ENFJ and everything like that, there's a lot of turnoff when it comes to the idea of FE being nicknamed harmony. And once again, that is not necessarily the only thing that's describing FE. But according to Personality Hacker, when it is at its best, when it is intentional, when it is matured and developed and all of that, it is naturally trying to create harmony. It doesn't mean that other functions aren't able to do that, but that is what FE is most focused on, due to it, more than any other function, being focused on the interpersonal dynamics. That is the inclination, that is the pattern of healthy FE. And when they look out and when they talk to other EFJs and IFJs and stuff like that, then they see this pattern, especially as they continue to help them to grow and become better people. Every healthy family looks the same, but not every unhealthy family looks the same. And so when FE is at its best and it's really healthy, then it is focused on trying to create harmony, and it's best at that. But unhealthy FE, well, yeah, it's probably creating discord. It's probably not good at being able to bring in, you know, shared values and things of that nature. And I feel like these are all things that, again, Personality Hacker is very aware of, and they are able to hold space for, but their goal is to help you, again, like it's much more than type. And even with that, they're not just talking about Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, but a lot of their podcasts go into other models like the Graves model, you know, with spiral dynamics and a whole bunch of other things. Like, how is our coding, like in our mind? Like, what have we been indoctrinated with? What is radical honesty? You know, how can we show up in the world in an authentic manner? Even though the heart of everything starts from personality typology, they really are just trying to create people who are operating at their best and getting the best out of life and understanding themselves and other people more. Which brings me to my final point in this video, which is they truly gather the highest quality people. Being that I've been in this community for so long, for years, and I've been listening to the podcast for so long, even just last week, I just came back from their 5-day live event for their profiler training students. It was my third profiler training live event experience. I was there actually for 7 days rather than 5, because there was an extra day where we dove into the dark night of the soul, pretty much learning about the persona and the ego and the subconscious and the whole self, which again has nothing to do with necessarily like the cognitive functions, but just being able to better understand and accept yourself and just overall become a better person. And guys, I mean it when I say that I'm really convinced that they have gathered the highest quality minds and hearts that you can probably ever find out there. Everyone at these events, they are so calibrated and they're so focused on understanding how you work. They're interested in your story. They're interested in being able to hold space for who you are authentically, all of your thoughts, and not just understand it and, you know, not pass judgment, but analyze it and even help you better understand yourself too from their perspective. It is absolutely wonderful the way that Joel and Antonia create so much intention around having a great community where everyone gets along and they're just interested in better understanding each other, and then they go back, and then whatever we have built in that community, we go back into our separate places in the world, and we allow those ripples to now vibrate, that energy to be able to vibrate throughout the people in our lives. That is the way that I see them making a difference. And these are people from literally all over the world. Like people from England came down, and, you know, we've had people from Australia pop down, and, you know, shout out to you, Cameron. You know, like it's amazing, like how many people that Personality Hacker has reached, and the way that Antonia and Joel are so personable with all of these students, with all of the alumni, like all of the people that show up. and they will sit down with you after they've taught these seminars and everything, and they will answer questions, they will hang out with you, they'll drink with you, they'll share all of their thoughts and everything. They are so kind. These are not the types of people where it's like they tell you like, oh, don't meet your heroes. Again, I stayed with them for 4 days and maybe, of course, that's not like a long enough time, but they're better to me in person than even when I listen to their podcast. And I feel like everyone would agree with that. So their intentions, like you can sense the sincerity in their hearts that, hey, we just want to help people. That's all that it is. This is, yes, we need to pay money. Like we have a family. We need to make money to be able to buy food so that we can continue to live. And how do you think that we're able to continue to produce these events and these products and everything? It's still a business at the end of the day. That's just life. But that doesn't take away from how much they really want to help people, to understand themselves and to understand the people around them, and to have, and not only just understand, but to better themselves and to have an overall, like just better and easier life, to move through life in a more simple way that is most natural to you. Once we come to this type of understanding, like unless if you've really been at these events, unless if you've really listened to the Personality Hacker podcast, unless if you've actually like talked to Antonia, it's so easy to cast judgment onto Personality Hacker and think and just simplify their mission and all of their messages and stuff like that. And it gets annoying over time, for me at least. It gets really annoying because it's like you don't even know the system enough. You like even when I recommend certain things to you, you're not listening. And I'm not having anybody particularly in mind, just so you know. It's just I've had enough of these experiences over the years, seeing people from Twitter and talking to people like in real life and just stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, I just had to say something. So in conclusion, this is not me trying to convince you that you need to go by the Personality Hacker school of thought. And Joel and Antonia, once again, did not put me up to this. This is not some sort of agenda. This is me just sharing why I personally ascribe to Personality Hacker. And maybe out of all of the systems that I know of, all of the teachers and everything, I trust them the most. Does that mean that I never disagree with them? No. There's times when I'm like, I don't really know. But the fact that we have Q&As every last Thursday of the month where we can talk to Antonia and Joel straight up for 2 hours, and we can come to the conclusion that we're having and calibrate and everything, and they give us that kind of space, and they know that even though they're the teachers, they're the experts, they want to hear from us, the students themselves, and they'll put us in these breakout rooms, and it's like, as an ENTJ, that's not really how it is for me. It's like, oh, please enlighten us. We're building this together, and I feel like that is, it's so essential. And so before you cast judgment on Personality Hacker, listen to them. Like, give them actual listens, not just 1 or 2 podcasts. Like, listen to them. Check out their articles. Check out profilertraining.com. Check out personalityhacker.com. Like, in order to give a proper criticism of anything, I think you need to understand the thing well enough. You can't just get a small thing and then criticize it. So like C.S. Joseph, I know a lot of people hate on the man. I am not really a fan, personally, but I can't criticize him or his work because honestly I've not watched enough of it to be able to criticize. I've watched a decent amount, sure, but I don't think I understand his system well enough and the ways that he approaches everything for myself enough to be able to criticize it. So yeah, before you criticize Personality Hacker, do the same thing, like be honest. And if you still feel like, yeah, this is just not me, that's totally cool. But I guess that's all I ask. Like I see way too much slander of them when they don't even, and then when I ask for the reasons, like they don't even know. Like I just don't like them because they nicknamed this. It's like, do you even know why they did that? Like, do you really, how many podcasts have you listened to? Like, how much of a chance did you actually give them? Oh, well, they sell so many products. Like, have you tried any of their products? Do you know why they're so expensive? That's quality stuff. Do you know how they got that quality? Like, think about this stuff. Again, it doesn't have to be for you, but just be a little bit more careful when you're doing this. Anyway, just had to get that spiel out of my head. If you have any comments, questions, if you want recommendations, make sure that you leave a comment and all of that. Let me know. Check them out. If you want to be part of these live events, don't bring no drama over there. We got a great community over there, so chill out with that. But if you want to pull up, like, check out profilertraining.com. That's where I got my training on how to profile that you guys watch online, like in my profiling playlists and stuff like that. And even from that, everybody has still, even within that school, like the personality hacker school, their own ways to profile. And they accept that. They just kind of give you the basics, not even the basics, the advanced, there's an advanced level, but they're like, hey, after you learn all of this, after you've watched enough profiling sessions from Melissa, Antonia, Joel, whatever, now you go out into the world and you figure out which one is best for you. And we're just going to continue to calibrate. It's all about the calibrating. And it's all about coming together, having a great community to be able to bounce things off of, to learn from, and then go back to your regular space and make a difference over there where you're at. All right. So without further ado, check those videos I mentioned out, check out those links, all of that, and give them a chance. Done.